Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel called Zuzanareacts, where I learn all things Bharat with your help and I just share my Slovak Central European point of view. And today is a part 2 of the Praveen Mohan Mysteries of India on the Ranveer show part. I'm actually super excited. It's been really cool. I hope you enjoyed the first part as much as I did. And I can't wait to get into the part 2. But before we do,
this video and click on the subscribe button and turn on the notification. Thank you so much for your support.
So I'm dying to know and continue and all that thing. So let's kick off.
What's your search for now after seeing so many temples? This is not the end of the podcast. We're going to talk a lot more. But what's next for you in terms of, I'm sure this is a subject and this is your subject. I feel every human has their one subject. Your subject is like temples. What's next in your quest?
There's no set quest, right? So the human mind is kind of a strange thing, because if you want to see God, eventually you will, because the human mind kind of, if you want to see the devil or if you want to see anything, right? So if you want to see like Tom and Jerry, your mind starts to find it. So the main part of my research is to like keep it completely open, right? I'm not limited to temples of India. I'm not even limited to temples of like Southeast Asia or Hindu temples or something like that. I'm actually traveling around the world with an open mind to see what's there. And this is how it started, right? So it started with going to Peru, going to Colombia, going to Cambodia, going to Mexico, and finding what's out there. Because if you go there with a predisposition, like if you say, oh, I'm going to find this, then you will find this, right? But you also have a tendency to misinterpret.
Information bias.
Yes, that information. So you're not going to have, this is very common in India, right? So people have already picked their sides, right, about what they want. And it actually prevents us from understanding the reality as it is. And this is a huge problem when we put out information.
Yeah.
This is.
I'm sure you're labeled as right-wing because of the nature of your work.
Oh, sure. I didn't even know how it started.
I'm labeled as like right-wing because I like learning about these subjects. But I've just realized no matter what you do on the internet, you're going to be put into a box.
Yes.
So might as well just continue and enjoy your work.
But I mean,
oh, I totally agree. I mean, it's such a nonsense to label people, and I see it in my comments, and I think it's laughable as well. So I totally agree with both of them. Like how someone that just sees a clip of your video, or even if they would see all my videos, can actually determine what you're leaning or whatever is. It's a pure nonsense. I'm sorry to say to those who are strongly convinced. And
I mean, it's the internet is a weird place, right? People get to talk anything about it. So I'm not bothered by it. I don't care about that. And it keeps in my videos, they keep switching it, because sometimes I'll make a video. I think 3 or 4 videos ago, I made a video like, did Christianity begin in India or something like that? Suddenly now I'm flooded with messages saying, like, oh my God, how much did Christians pay you? So that'll also happen to me, because a lot of times I'm only here to show you what I found and how I interpret that information, right? Sometimes it may confirm your confirmation bias. Sometimes it may be against that. I shouldn't be worried about that. You know, I should be able to tell you whatever I feel like telling you. And see, I started out in the US, and I've showed many ancient sites in the US, by the way, multiple, maybe 20 different sites, and a few sites in Peru.
Do you feel parallels with Indian sites?
Of course, many parallels with Hindu sites. And that's why I came back to India. I did not actually plan on coming back to India. But when I started to look at ancient sites, I started to realize, oh my God, there's just so much similarity between Hinduism and, let's say, Peruvian civilization or Incas.
2 ends of the world.
Yes.
Like, I think if you dig a hole through India, you'll probably land up somewhere in South America.
Yes.
That's how far they are.
Yes. And then you can see that they are in many ways.
It's interesting because that's somehow in the video that we did on Mahabharata with Nilesh. Oh, that's what he's also drawing those parallels there. So very interesting. So he's basically just confirming what we know from Nilesh Oak.
Very similar, right? They worship. If you go to Peru, the popular gods, they worship Nagas.
Really?
Yeah, they worship.
Okay, let's talk about this. Let's talk about even the modern day Naga worship in India. What are Nagas? I have a crazy theory, and this is just a pure fan fiction theory. There's no truth behind this. I would like to believe that some of the dinosaurs survived and then eventually evolved to become
Nagas?
Yeah. I mean, but it's a very deep fanboy theory. I'm just throwing it out there. What if? You never know. Because my question is, they say that if you actually study dinosaurs in general, there was different periods like Cretaceous, Jurassic, etc., etc. We think that all those time periods are very close to themselves. and then human beings happened like way later. But if you actually put the timeline in front of you, you are nearer to the last dinosaur period than the last dinosaur period was to the one before it.
Oh, so it's just relatively like closer.
Why
But
did
that's still 65 million years ago.
why didn't they evolve to become something over such a long time span? Or did they? This is just theory. I'm kind of throwing out a question.
This is a very good
Thought
I love
experiment.
this idea that there are some strange findings that you will think it's interesting. I put them online. I put them on YouTube. If you go to Top Ram Temple in Cambodia, this is an ancient Hindu site. Okay, it's a Brahma temple.
Okay.
A temple built for Brahma, but they call it Top Ram now. It's just in Cambodia.
What does that mean?
It's just a local way of saying Brahma.
Okay.
Okay. You will actually find a dinosaur carved in the temple. It looks exactly like a specific dinosaur called Stegosaurus.
Wow.
Okay.
And there's supposed to be a Stegosaurus in Democratic Republic of Congo as well. Like there's been sightings which are
Still existing.
yeah, Mukele Mbembe.
Oh, really?
Come up on the show.
Oh,
Again, it's a theory, and the local pygmies they believe that it's there.
Yeah.
I had lots of people on the show with opposing opinions. Some very strong positive ones, some strong negative ones. But go on, sir.
but this is really interesting, right? Because look, if ancient Indians, or in this case, ancient Hindus in Cambodia carved this temple maybe 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, but dinosaurs, according to most experts, became extinct 65 million years ago. So how did the sculptors carve the Stegosaurus accurately in that temple, right? So this is there. And then you can find many strange carvings, very similar to dinosaurs in Mahabalipuram. You can find extinct species. I put this on Praveen Mohan channel periodically. I will keep on putting it like every year. I'll find a species of dinosaur or some extinct animal. For example, in Angkor Wat, you can find an elephant with 4 tusks. Okay, and that species became extinct maybe like 100,000 years ago. They've found skeletons and then fossils of the 4-tusked elephant.
It was the ancestor of the mammoth,
Yeah.
possibly.
Yes,
Huh?
but it became extinct a long time ago. How did the sculptors carve that? Right? If the temples are, look, I mean, you don't know what species existed 1 lakh years ago. You don't know that, right? How can you, if I ask you to paint something, how will you paint a species that existed 100,000 years ago? Unless, you had records like how we have, paleontology and all these department records today. So how did they do that? So we do find carvings of extinct species in many ancient sites. Okay. And then all cultures have had dragons.
Let's do it.
But you know this, all cultures have had dragons. Not only in many people only think, oh, it's Chinese or something like that.
Yeah.
If you go to many of the ancient Hindu temples, you will see carvings of dragons. And like, you have to wonder, are they dragons or are they actually like dinosaurs?
I think before you open up this topic, I'd love for you to give the Hindu narrative on what Nagas are/were, based on whatever you know about it or whatever you've learned over your journey.
Okay. Now, my perspective of Nagas, okay, it's can be quite different, and it has other meanings as well. We all know Nagas. Most Hindus know Nagas. It's the word we use for snake. Okay, but how are Nagas mentioned in texts? Right? They were not snakes. They were not humans as well. Right? They were a completely different species that looked like humanoids. Right? That they looked
I know. Is that a theory of reptilians? Let's get into it.
human, but they could also shapeshift.
Oh, really?
Yes, they could change into whatever they wanted to be. And they never lived on the ground. They always lived in subterranean levels, meaning they only lived underground. Sometimes this is why, the Nagas belong in the Patala Loka. You know this,
Yeah.
right? Don't you?
And also when Bhim was, when the Kauravas tried killing Bhim in the Mahabharata, they throw him in a lake, and at the bottom of the lake, he finds the world of the Nagas,
Yeah.
who actually help him survive. I mean, that's the story.
Yes.
But go on.
Yes. But if you go to Mahabalipuram, you can actually see Nagas changing their shape from snakes to humans. You can see them like kind of coming out of the underground level and then like becoming almost human, right? And all the other people are just like looking at the transformation. You can see carvings like that. So in modern terms, right, Nagas are reptilians, right? They're an alien species that are able to change color, change shape. They can look like human if they wanted to, and they live in a different dimension. They kind of lived underground or something. Okay, if you're into that, if YouTube is not going to ban your video, then
YouTube banned your video for doing this?
well, YouTube banned many of my videos, right? YouTube banned, demonetized, banned, deleted thumbnails.
On what basis? I saw a recent video of yours where I think you got into trouble for showing a sculpture, and YouTube banned it because they said nudity or something like that was part.
I have a long history of videos getting banned, demonetized by YouTube. My Qutub Minar video was demonetized. My Taj Mahal video was demonetized. Any content that challenges the mainstream narrative, right, gets demonetized. This has always happened. I mean, I even made videos about this 2 years ago, saying that YouTube is constantly doing this. Now YouTube has come up with a completely different idea, and this is really fascinating to me because YouTube says, "Oh, there's nudity in your content." and I'm just showing a temple. Okay,
You
so
sure you didn't take your shirt off, Mr. No, I'm kidding, I'm kidding.
I never see most of the videos. I never show like actually. I don't even show my face. If it's a 10-minute video, you only see my face for a minute. Okay, for the rest of the 9 minutes, you only see carving. Okay, so I'm very focused on that.
Because your face is so sexy. Okay, go on.
So, but what YouTube is actually saying is that the Hindu gods must be covered up. Our gods are going to look like this. They're going to be half naked or full naked.
Because apparently that's how we dressed before the invasions.
Yes, right. Look, I mean, who's saying this to who? You can go to the US and you can go to the nude beaches today, right? And they think it's cool to have nude beaches. And they're telling Indians about fashion and all this stuff. We used to be really, quote unquote, liberal. We were really carefree back then. That's how my gods are going to look. Our gods are going to, they don't bother. Right? We didn't have to cover up because somebody's going to come and steal us or something like that. We were a free culture. Okay. Our gods, if they don't want to wear clothes, they can not wear. We lived in a free society back then. Okay. And that's how the gods were going to look in ancient temples. We can't change it. Right. And YouTube has also said, no, this is too violent. Right. Because what, Narasimha is killing a demon? Like, how are you going to change that? So YouTube is actually putting on conditions saying that, oh, this is nudity. And this is not only for female carvings and not only limited to Hinduism. There is a giant carving of Bahubali. He's a Jain god in Shravana Belagola. Do you know this? There is a temple in Karnataka. This is a Jain temple, by the way. And this has a huge monolithic statue of a male, prophet, if you will. His name is Bahubali. And of course, he's naked, right? Of course, he's a monk. He has detached himself from the whole world. So you think he's going to be completely covered up or something like that? He's naked. And that video got banned, saying that, oh, this is nudity.
Wow.
So what is YouTube saying about that, right? Or ancient Indian temples, adults only sites or something like that? So should we take our kids to temples, or should we be like, oh, like, my God, I shouldn't take my kids to the temples because it's full of like nude carvings or something like that? That's impossible, right? The temples give you insane amount of knowledge, right? So, but then there is also a racist angle to this. Okay, I don't know if you should put this on your channel, by the way.
That's okay. That's all right.
But whatever I touch, everything becomes banned. Yeah, so that could, I seriously don't know if you will put it. But YouTube has a racist angle to that game, right? For example, YouTube has videos of museum in Athens, right? That shows all the Greek gods and Greek goddesses. They're all completely nude. YouTube doesn't ban them. YouTube doesn't demonetize them. But why ban only Hindu carving? Why ban only Indian carving? Now, we have to be extremely careful with this, okay? Because why did I make a video about this? I don't normally make videos, man. I don't like drama, to be honest with you. I don't make drama videos. Like, nobody knows who I am, like what I do or where I live. I don't like that stuff. I only focus on ancient sites. But why am I making a video like that, right? Because YouTube is modifying the behavior of thousands of YouTubers who cover Hindu temples. You understand? So YouTube demonetizes my video saying that, oh, this is nudity. It's not only demonetizing me. It's going to demonetize Ramesh or Suresh, who's also covering Hindu temples. It'll send out this information to, like, let's say 10,000 YouTubers. Most of the YouTubers will not even reply back. They will only think of it as a punishment and say, look, this is a problem. If we film Hindu temples, YouTube is going to ban me. So now let me go film a mall. Now let me go film a beach, right? So it's consciously programming people away from the Hindu temples. You understand? So this is what I'm trying to raise awareness about, is that it should not exist. The Hindu temples should not be banned or demonetized.
Yeah, I hear you.
I'm going to pause it here. I hear what he's saying. There are even like many of mine videos are demonetized or whatever, but not that YouTube is really paying any money, to be honest. But the way I see it, like just taking very, very logical approach here, is that yes, they have guidelines, like, right, it's a private company. They can perhaps do what they want with it, right? Like, we're just utilizing their platform. But I wonder if it's not like, to what we were talking about more in the part one, like maybe there is some, I don't know. Obviously, for those engineers out there, technical people, like, it's based off algorithm. When I get flags around, these types of things on my channel, it feels like it's very automated, and humans barely look into that. So it is coded. I would find it hard to believe that it's propagated from one side to the other, but he's making a propelling argument about the Greek stuff. And this is what I'm also thinking, if there is anything to do with, like how certain people one history to be perceived, etc. That is kind of where I'm thinking that he obviously, like, he's been noticing and he's been comparing, so there must be some truth to that. But I just the thing is, like, YouTube is running on algorithm. I don't know, any technical people, to me it's just like they have their guidelines on X, Y, and Z, nudity, blah blah blah, and they will simply remove it because they're generally programmed into it. But would be curious to know if any of you, what kind of experience you've got. I would love to know, honestly.
I have to bring you back to the Nagas though,
Oh,
like, because
no,
we trailed off, and I love the trail off, but the Nagas thing caught my attention. So you explained what Nagas are. I gave my fan fiction theory about how maybe they evolved from dinosaurs. You never know.
Yes.
My question is about what you saw abroad. You said that Peru had a version of the Nagas. What's up?
What's up?
Gave my fan fiction theory about how maybe they've evolved from dinosaurs. You never know.
Yes.
My question is about what you saw abroad. You said that Peru had a version of the Nagas. What's up?
It's a little bit of a strange theory, but Nagas are actually found everywhere. Okay, you can go to the US and you can see a great serpent mound in Ohio. This is a giant snake that you can only see from the air. And if you go to Peru, these are called Amaru, which basically is a Sanskrit word. Amar means an immortal god, right? Right, in Sanskrit. If you go to Colombia, you can see the Nagas guarding. You can, if you go to Colombia, there's a place called San Agustin, and then you can see a lingam guarded by a Naga.
Like a shivling.
Yes. Yes.
I have been reading a lot about shivlings lately, and what I figured is that construction, this is yogic philosophy, supposed to be able to capture a lot of energy. What does that mean? For the ones who are meant to understand, they'll understand. For the ones who are not meant to understand, they'll say, what do you mean by energy, bro?
Yes.
What is this vague term? Now go on.
Yeah, so you have this Naga culture. Of course, you can see this in Mayans. You can see this in South America. Then you can in Israel, Nagas are called Nakash. Basically the same terminology. And you know this, right? Snakes are called serpents in the Bible. They're called serpents, and Jews called it seraph, and Hindus call it sarpa. This is still the word we use in South. We call it sarpam, meaning Naga. So it's not just that we all worship the Nagas, but it's even the names are similar. Nagas are called Nakash, and sarpas are called serpents or seraphs in all over the world. So if you look at the entire world, and if you look at all the ancient civilizations, they will tell you one story.
It's a common story.
Very, very similar common story.
Okay.
That humans, the very first rulers, came from Naga.
As in the first rulers over human beings were actually Nagas.
If you go to Cambodia, for example, the very first ruler is a Naga ruler. It's not completely human, right? And the Nagas, they come from somewhere and they take over the planet and they start building civilization. So they were the original ancestors, right?
Of humans?
In a way. They come from somewhere. It's a very hard thing to explain. I could explain it to you. I could explain it to you in a way that, let's say, a race of reptilians, right? They go to a planet and they find a bunch of cavemen there, right? So they land on this planet. Now, what will the cavemen think?
These are gods.
Exactly. So what we actually see from various accounts is basically that the original queens and kings of almost any civilization are Naga kings. Okay, and they have these weird places. For example, in Cambodia they have this. In South India and Tamil Nadu, they have at the top of the mountain they have a place called Kullar Caves. Okay, and of course archaeological explanation is different. They say they are dolmens. You have seen the dolmens. There's a small little stone huts up the top of a hill. We can see this everywhere. Okay, these are called Kullar Caves. In Tamil Nadu, there's a place called Balyampara in Tamil Nadu. There's a place called Hire Benakal in Karnataka. And it takes you maybe like 2 hours to go up a mountain. Okay, nobody goes there. Even the villagers, unless you pay them good money, they won't take you there because the mountains have bears, right? So they won't take you there. But if you go there, you'll see stone huts. Archaeologists will say, no, people lived there like 3,000 years ago, right? These are Stone Age people who lived there. And these huts, you cannot even go into these huts, by the way. Like, it's very hard for you to crouch into these huts, by the way. But if you ask the villagers, they'll tell you one story and one story only, that there were beings that came from the sky, and these beings were very short, and they came from the sky, and they started to civilize human beings. The human beings were initially afraid of them. Okay, but they taught all the construction technology, all the, how to make fire, for example. They taught all their stuff. Like, we don't know what they were doing. And then after a particular point of time, Like maybe after building all the fantastic structures, they're just gone. So they just vanish. Now it's very hard, right? And you can see me getting local accounts, right? So I will go to these places, I will have my camera, and I will, because people always say, "Oh no, Praveen Mohan he's just making up stories." So I'll actually have it on camera saying that, "Okay, tell me what you think," right? And they will tell us, "Oh look, no, this is what archaeologists are saying. Humans were building these stone huts on the top of the hill. We cannot do this today. How do we carry up? Nobody goes there even today." Okay, and the villagers completely dismiss, mainstream theory, but they will say there is a completely different species or race that lived there, and we used to be afraid of them. They could call us, they could, select people, but we were not allowed to go up the mountain, right? And you can see the same story everywhere. And now if you walk on the top of the mountain, okay, between the mountain and underneath there are villages, at the bottom, and between the two, there is a temple. Usually there is a temple. And in that temple, there are Nagas. And the locals still go to those temples and they worship them. By all accounts, those species, which are like the weird, alien species, if you will, those are the Naga, right? So 20 years ago, maybe we thought this is all just mythology. But now we are able to understand this really well, I think, because Elon Musk is trying to go to Mars, or, very soon, right? Within 50 years, we're going to go to a different planet.
Even if there's a civilization that's 1,000 years older than us, it'll probably be technologically way more advanced. Because 1,000 years is a long time, keeping technology in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, you don't have to go 1,000 years ago, like maybe 400 years ago, when Christopher Columbus went to the US, right? I mean, back then it was not the US. When Christopher Columbus went to, the Americas, the local tribes actually thought he was a god. They had never seen a ship just 200 years ago, right? I don't know exactly, maybe like 400 years ago. People thought he was a god. They had never seen a ship that big. They actually thought, oh, this god does not have any skin because he's so white. They thought that this is a different species. And when they saw that they could pull a trigger and they could kill a person far away, they started to worship the guns. They thought that it was some magical weapon that can fire by itself. So you don't need a lot of gap, right? So even if we are a little bit advanced, right? Look, I mean, this is the thing, right? If aliens have enough knowledge and if they have enough technology to come and land on Earth, then there would be no competition between humans and aliens. There would be no competition, right? I mean, think about that, right? People are always mocking, saying that, if aliens are visiting us, why are they not appearing before us? Or why are they not talking to us? Do we talk to chimpanzees? Do we talk to the dolphins? Do we talk to lions? We don't.
We only talk to people who will agree with us so that it satisfies our egos.
No, but you actually dismiss those animals, right? You're not going to have a meaningful conversation because, look.
What I meant to say is a lot of people are going to be listening to this conversation completely closed. Because I feel this is where the power of curiosity is really challenged. I love it because these are questions I've had since I was a little kid, and I can speak for a lot of the listeners as well. There's a whole bunch of skeptics who are just completely shut down to this idea. But who knew that 20 years ago, we'll have devices in our pockets, which are cameras, calculators, etc.
Everything.
You never know what's in the realms of possibility.
Look, it's kind of weird to think that there's no life outside Earth.
No, and you know what? I'll tell you what else. I feel there's two people who have a right to talk about these things. First, archaeologists who dedicate their entire life to discovering the past. And there's a lot of schools of thoughts in archaeology. There's some extremely evidence-based. There's some kind of question things the way we do. And then there's Graham Hancock type of people who are trying to discover what the rest of the world shuns. The second kind of people who have the right to speak about history are people like yourself, who are putting their physical bodies and their intellect into places in order to discover lost history, because history in truth is completely fragmented. We only know pieces of it and lots of it is lost. And that's the reason our history books teach us history that's not really needed to be taught, honestly. I mean, if you want to look at it that, I don't know if that, I may take that sentence back. I think all history is fantastic, even the stuff that you disagree with now. But my point is there's a lot of more interesting stuff that's hidden within India. And as someone who's going to all that interesting stuff, you have the right to say things. And you're an engineer, so you're from a science background. I'm sure you throw in science within all the experiences you have. I want to hear more about this whole alien situation that you've seen all over the world.
We were talking about the Nagas, right? So, and the point that I was making was that what Nagas are, if you will, right? They're not snakes, right? That's clear. They're also not human, but they're a completely different species or a race. All ancient civilizations mention them. They mention them as the very first queen or king of their civilization. Many people argue that if you go to Nagaland, they'll probably confirm your theory. We descended from the Nagas. If you go to Sri Lanka, they maintain that they descended from the Nagas. Most people don't know this. Most people think that Cambodia has a lot of Hindu temples. You know this?
Yeah.
Cambodia has Angkor Wat. A lot of Hindu temples are there. When do you think Hinduism entered Cambodia?
Probably 2,000, 3,000 years ago.
That's the point. The point is many people think and that's a good guess. This is how you're supposed to actually think about. While if you talk to normal people think, it went from India to Cambodia, maybe 1,000 years, right? But that's not true, because the very first king and queen mentioned, the very first ruler of Cambodia, is called Soma. That's a Hindu name, right? This is not a man. This is a woman. And the woman descends from the Nagas. Okay. And she marries a human called Kaundinya. And we can, of course, dismiss this as a pure mythology, right? Oh, a Naga, like starting a civilization in Cambodia, right? But if you go to a place called Angkor Bore, nobody goes to this place. This is like 2 hours away from the capital of Cambodia. Nobody goes there. It's completely in ruins. It's kind of a rough, dark place. But you can see ruins that are 2,000 years old. Some are even saying that it's like 3,000, 4,000 years old. Okay. And we can see evidences of Hinduism, and you'll see Nagas all over the place, as though the Nagas founded that empire. And we can see this everywhere. We can see this in remote parts of India. We can see it in huge temples. And I have a theory about this, right? So this is a very interesting theory that I like to think about. So let's say you have a photo album, right, of the last 50 years, right? This album, let's say I have it. Let's say I have a photo album of all my family members, right? So I'm not there 50 years ago, obviously. So I wouldn't be in some of the pictures. So how do you find out who is the oldest person in the family?
By the looks.
What else would you use?
Just from the photos.
Just from the photos. How would you find out who's the oldest? If you had 100 pictures, how would you find out who's the oldest thing, or who's the oldest person in the family?
Maybe carbon date all the photographs and then see which.
No, the person, right? So who was? Let's say there are like a couple of grandmas and grandpas, blah blah blah. So the oldest person should appear in all the pictures, right? That's the way to find out who's the oldest, because I won't be there like 50 years ago, right? And maybe some other person may not be there because he's born after that time. But the person who's in all the pictures must be the oldest. Right? This should be common sense. This is how we find out, who's the oldest employee in your organization. He's the person who's in all the pictures, right? Because in some pictures, the new employees are not there, blah, 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 right? This is the scenario with the Nagas. You can find Nagas in all the temples. You may not find other gods. You may not find, for example, Kartikeya. You may not find Ganesha. But the Nagas are, by design, they are there in every temple, not only in temples, but no matter where you go, the Nagas are carved in their ancient structures.
Why aren't historians thinking more about this? Like, why has this come up on a podcast? Why isn't it there in the mainstream? Because
it's borderline fantasy stuff, right? Nobody, unless you have a crazy guy like me coming out and saying Nagas may have created the world's civilization. It's a ridiculous thought process, right? There was a guy called David Icke. Have you heard of him? There was a guy called David Icke, and he's still there, by the way. And he's the one who said there are reptilians controlling humans now. You know what people did? People made him into a laughing stock of his time, actually. And now he's banned from YouTube and Facebook and everywhere, right? But when you put forth a radical thought process, and I'm merely entertaining that, right? I would like to think that too. If in some temples Shiva is not there, some temple in Vishnu is not there, Ganesha is not there. But if in all the temples and all the ancient sites, Nagas are there, then Nagas are the oldest gods around the world.
Also, after speaking to archaeologists, I've learned that when you look at carvings in temples, they're always messages for future generations. And everything erodes other than stone.
Oh, yeah.
Stone erodes the slowest.
Yes.
If you want a message to go really far ahead in terms of time, you put it in a temple or you put it in a monument.
This is a brilliant point that the archaeologists made, right? Each and every carving a sculptor made 1,000 years ago would have been like his own child, right? He's not going to make something random, right? So it's very hard for humans to understand this, why they carved all these things in stones, right? Why they carved these things in temples. So let me ask you, like, what is a temple?
I used to say it's a place of worship. Now I say it's some sort of a time capsule.
Wow, yeah, that's an interesting perspective. Today, when we think about temples, right? Let's say some locals are building a temple. Their discussion is funny. They're thinking like, oh, how many people in this area worship Shiva? How many people in this area worship Vishnu? Maybe we should put like a Krishna statue because that's what people worship, right? So they're almost having a business meeting about how to build a temple, right? And they put an idol there in the center, and they'll put a huge donation box, in a very prominent place, right? This is a hundi. We all know this. And then they'll see how they can make events. So it runs as a business, right? This is what happens today. But when you enter an ancient temple, or when you start seriously analyzing an ancient temple, you get a completely different perspective, right? Your first impression when you start to analyze a temple is that you start to look at the bottom, you see animals, okay? Not just like a row of elephants or like a row of lions or something. No, like you'll see a baby elephant drinking milk from its mom. That's weird, right? You've never seen that. I don't even know. Actually, elephants do that. Baby elephants drink milk from their moms. But why would that be carved in a temple, right, where you're supposed to worship God, right? It turns out that they had a completely different system, and they had a different thought process when they built temples. It turns out that a temple can be split into multiple levels from the bottom to the top. At the bottom, you will always see animals. Okay, why? Let's say you're taking a 5-year-old child. This child is like this small, right? He's walking around. He can only see this level, right? What is he naturally interested in? What is this child naturally going to look at? If you give him a TV, right? What is he going to watch? He's going to be naturally interested in animals. This was the Animal Planet or Discovery Channel back in the day. And they're putting this in stone. And some of them are hilarious, like Cartoon Network. Like you'll see a goat, you'll see a monkey riding a goat, like a man riding a horse. Monkeys do that. Monkeys ride on goats. That's what monkeys do. And they put that in a stone 1,000 years ago. And if you're a child, that's all you're going to see. You're going to have the best time, ever in an ancient temple, right? If you're between 6 and 10, they have a different level for that. You're going to be naturally interested in music. You're going to be interested in dance. You're going to see carvings of people playing musical instruments. You're going to see all the carvings of that. And if you're between 11 and 15, you're going to see a lot of science and technology. You're going to see there's a sundial in Konark Temple where you can put a finger and you can tell the time accurately down to 1 minute. Okay, that's more than 800 years old. And it is in that level. It's between 11 to 15. And you can still go there. You can put a finger there and you can say, oh, now it's like 233. Okay. So you're going to find science and technology between that level. And between 16 and 20, as you grow, right, you're going to see carvings of war, administration, politics. You will see people like wrestling. You'll see people taking flags and you'll see people fighting. You'll see all the stuff in that level. And from 21 to 25, you're going to see a lot of erotica. You're going to see a lot of lovemaking. There are various carvings. And people don't understand that, right? Why are temples having this? Blah, blah, blah. No, it's part of your life. This is the time when you're naturally interested in that, in that field.
Normalizing sex.
Yeah, this is normal, right? Everybody does it. Why shouldn't we talk about it, right? And that's how free, the ancient Indian society was. They put a lot of erotica. In many places, they show what is right and what is wrong. People don't understand that. It's not only just about erotica, okay? They show how women give birth. And they did it standing.
Really?
Yeah, people, and 100 years ago, Europeans saw these cane carvings. And they were saying that, oh my God, these Indian women gave birth standing, right? Why didn't they even have a bed? Today, this is the recommended practice because they advise women to give birth while standing because gravity does half the work. Okay, and then you don't need all the vacuum pullouts and all that stuff. It's beneficial for both the mom and the baby if you give birth while standing. And it's not only just giving birth like that. After giving birth, and this carving is...
I've never heard of this. First time I'm hearing. I know that the more natural, like in water birth is a thing. Never heard of this one. So maybe in India, I don't know.
Again, in Konark, you will see women standing like putting their legs wide and standing under fire.
Gee.
Okay, there'll be like a small little fire and they'll be standing on top of it. And many people did not know this. Like, what is this carving? What is this showing? But when we traveled in Odisha, we saw a tribe called Bonda. And these people actually do this every time they give birth to a child.
Oh.
This is the way of disinfecting. They put certain plants and herbs and they kind of, they burn it and they let that smoke go in to disinfect and cauterize. This is the thing. And they have documented all this stuff in stone. So a temple is not just a place of worship, right? So they divided them. Like if you're 0 to 5, this is what you see. If you're 5 to 10, this is what you see. And if you're 20 to 25, you see. And only above that level, you see gods. So the temple was never built as a place of like just worship. It was built as a Wikipedia in stone or like a town museum in stone. And why did they do it in stone? Exactly what that person was telling you. Because if you write it in a leaf, if you put it in a painting, that can be easily destroyed. The temples are still standing. Most of the temples, like you can see all the cuts and destruction in the carvings. People tried to destroy the temples. But the ancestors knew that even after destruction, the structures would stand.
Praveen Mohan, this is not the end of the conversation, but it is the end of this first episode. Got to do a second one with you because I think the conversation has just warmed up a little bit. This one was centered around Nagas. I have so many more questions about your international travel. To sum up the first episode, what would you like to say to the listeners, especially those that are coming across you for the first time?
Everybody subscribe to Praveen Mohan.
Feel it. Emotionally connected to you.
Really? No, I think what I would tell the viewers, no matter who you are, from where you're watching, you can read history, but take it with a grain of salt. Just open your eyes a little bit more and just think about things a little bit deeper. You don't have to take my word for this. but don't take a history book in like as at face value. Just use critical thinking. You don't have to believe everything I say, but use critical thinking. How did such temples come into effect without advanced technology? There are serious holes in history and archaeology books, and it's up to us to, make them right. That's what I want them all to know.
My message is that, especially if you're young, if you're in college, or if you're a fresh college grad, be open to the wonders of history and the wonders of the world, because we're not the most advanced civilization, and there's definitely been more advanced civilizations than us. That's the one thing I've learned through all these archaeology podcasts. There was batteries found in the pyramids. The temples have signs and symbols that have very deep philosophy, and it's very likely that we weren't even the most evolved beings that have seen this planet. So, Praveen Mohan, thank you for episode 1.
Thank you for having me.
See you in 5 minutes.
Wow, so this is super, super fascinating. I loved it. I really loved it. Such a shame it took me so long to get here, but here we are. And I was really fascinated about Nagas because I think I mentioned many times about Mattias de Stefano. So one thing is Mattias de Stefano in his series, he talks about the reptilians as they were ruling. I think they were Anunnakis. You would have reptilians. You'd have hybrids between human and I'm just saying these things like that is his channeled knowledge, right? Like, so take it as you will. But he says that I think there was around a time Egypt that the kind, how do I even explain that? Because the way Matthias, for example, explains the world, you need to understand the purpose of the earth. And that there were battles of the earth, and that the earth was experiment to understand how we evolve as a species. In fact, that experiment is connected with some sort of a greater galactical prophecy. So part of that, they're reptilians, and they were here, and they thought that also the earth belonged to them, whatever. And around the time of in Egypt, they were basically told that they can no longer be on earth because, like this human experiment needs to continue on their own. And there was like a lot of them have passed over to different dimensions, whatever. But a lot of them apparently has gone underground. And that is when you have these kind of like pacts with the D, right? Where the thing is like they somehow like couldn't advise humanity or whatever. And basically they went underground and they entrapped, and this when you have through the money and fame and blah, blah, blah. So they have excessive knowledge. They feel like this planet belonged to them. Then they were peed off. And because they were told that they need to go. So those that resisted went underground and then made these pacts with humans and circumvent whatever the extraterrestrial beings or gods or whatever you want to call them told them. And since then they were underground. And interestingly enough, the Mr. Hancock, there's this new Netflix series. When you go to Göbekli Tepe, and there is another Tepe, Kana, something like that Tepe, which is found not very far from Göbekli Tepe, which is really, really, I don't know how many thousand years old, but it's like, very, very prior everything that shouldn't make sense, all that kind of jazz. And he found there also like a reptilian type of a thing. And him, when he talked to the camera, feel free to watch that series. It's called, I think, Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix. And he says like he didn't have a good feeling. And he said like you could see, and they were showing the head, I couldn't see the body. It wasn't that clear, but the way he was describing the head, I could see was like not very nice or friendly. But the rest, he goes like it came from like a snake-like, like that throat area type of thing. So it's interesting. Like that's the thing, right? Like with us, we like to be rational. We think that, we are the best thing since sliced bread if we are the most scientific, blah, blah. But a lot of things don't add up. And a lot of things have 100% been manipulated. And I think that has messages at the very end. Like there is like one global by now, maybe Anglo-Saxon Britain type of a history that we all have to abide. And then everything that is outside of the narrative is going to be, you know, procured by things like this particular technology we're watching this through, right? There's just so many things that don't add up. And I feel like right now we're living in this era of transformation that more of these thoughts are coming up. And the thing is, like, just because you don't believe something, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? So that's why I believe he's saying, like, keep it with an open mind. And the more I'm literally reading, let's say, on Slavic history, there are things about women that apparently Slavic women were fighting like men. They were fighting with men. They were like really big warriors. Interesting similarity with the Indian, right? That you say, like, when you talk about like women warriors there, but apparently, and I'm like, this explains why Slavic women act the way they do. But you know, I feel it's all very tricky. I feel like at one point, sooner rather than later, I think I'm going to create like my own original video on like critical thinking, evaluation stuff, because it's not so simple, right? Like, you would almost have to be in the head of the person that were there and understand that context. Like, you know, how many times has it happened to you that your intention was completely misinterpreted, right? And someone said, oh, you know, because you look like that, because you said this, you must have 100% meant that. And in your head, it was a completely different story, right? And it has to be, everything has to be understood within the context. But how do you really analyze that properly when it comes to such an ancient past? Like, you don't have any thought processes of those people. You're just like trying to interpret something in somehow, some way, where us on a normal level, just like right now, humans, we are misinterpreting each other so grossly and so frequently that it's beyond, right? So a lot of things have to be really, really considered, but nonetheless, it's like asking questions like when, you know, you have ancient signs that don't make sense. But, you know, I guess it's easier to not to make it as a mainstream narrative. And I do think that we should be, you know, on our own figuring these things out for ourselves and keep an open mind, because... And the open mind is also because it's so hard, I think, to interpret it. And I think it's truly fascinating. I love this type of thing. So thank you guys so much for watching this video with me. If you did enjoy it, please give a thumbs up, share, like, and subscribe to my channel. And I'll see you in the next video. Until then, please do take care. I am sending lots and lots of love. Bye-bye.